Hello, everyone. I'm Blayne Gilmer. Welcome to Southeastern 14. This is your SEC Morning Report. We are here on a Tuesday morning, September 12th, and we are entering Week 3 of SEC college football play here. We're finally getting some conference matchups as we're going to see Georgia and South Carolina go head-to-head. LSU go to Mississippi State. Also, you're going to see Tennessee travel to the Swamps, and we have previews and predictions on all of them on the channel. So you need to head over there because we've got all the games, even the ones I didn't get to right there, that are going to have previews and predictions here on Southeastern 14. Later in the week, we'll have official betting picks, all that kind of stuff from Brian Edwards, our resident Vegas expert. Jake Crane later in the week from Crane & Company here. From the Daily Wire. He'll be with us on every Friday for Jake's Takes. But right now, it's for your morning report, your time to get into some injury news. And as we do on every Tuesday, see what the coaches say on Sunday and Monday press conferences and kind of bring you a recap of who's injured going into some of these matchups for the week. Let's start with Arkansas as they host BYU. They had a lackluster performance against Kent State, not a very good football team. They're going to be hosting a BYU team that is 2-0 but has not played great competition and hasn't played very well against that competition. So I think out of precaution, you're going to see Rocket Sanders out. He's going to be out due to that knee. I think it's just, giving him time to continue to rest before they have to get into the SEC schedule here. Arkansas is going to need to play better up front. I know people are going to mention, okay, the PFF grades and all that kind of stuff. They weren't getting enough movement for those running backs. They only averaged, I believe, 3.8 yards per carry against Kent State. Not going to cut it. They need to be able to run the football better, and they need to get some more separation on the outside at the receiver position. We'll see if they're able to do that against BYU. Defensively, they'll have Dwight McGlothern back. He only played one snap in that game against Kent State, so he's going to be back at starting corner. They had some other guys rotating in there after he left that game, so he will be back according to Sam Pittman. So that's Arkansas versus BYU. Auburn has Samford in a non-conference game, and I don't know that with it being Samford and with it being a lesser opponent that Auburn should be able to take care of, I don't know that you'll see Nehemiah Pritchett or J.D. Ryan back, both dealing with some ankle injuries, I believe. Jalen McLeod as well. He was a guy who came back for the Cal game, but he didn't look like he was, moving around 100% out there when he was out there. Had to continually go to the sideline, get on the exercise bike, and try to stay loose over there. So you have to wonder if those guys will get a little bit of a respite there against a Samford team. Listen, at cornerback, Kayan Lee, a freshman for Auburn, has stepped up and has done some good things over there, especially in a highly competitive Power 5 game last week against Cal. So I think, Nehemiah Pritchett, he has been dressing out and warming up and things like that, but I don't know that he'll go. If he does, he might be limited in this game. So they were kind of non-committal about that, saying they were unsure if those guys were going to be ready at Auburn. That's what Hugh Freeze was saying. Mississippi State heading into that LSU game, Kobe Albert, who is a reserve safety, a guy that was going to be in the 2 deep. He's likely going to be out for the rest of the year, or is going to be out for the rest of the year. Zach Arnett said he's going to have surgery on his knee that he injured in fall camp, and he will be out for the rest of the year rehabbing that. They are going to get a freshman defensive lineman in Calvin Dinkins back soon. He's been a little dinged up, but he's going to come back, and that'll help them, add some depth across that defensive front there for Zach Arnett and company heading into LSU. Big home game there. Big home game. Can the Cowbells, can that stadium make a difference in this? I think that Mississippi State being able to run the football better, and we're going to get into what Zach Arnett said about his offense a little bit later on. They do run the football better, and that's almost been, it's been crazy. Okay, you're not running the football enough. Now you're running it too much, from last year to this year in Mississippi State. So we'll see. We'll talk about what Zach Arnett said about his offense, about how he managed it as a head coach and what he learned from that game last week. But now they have LSU this week, and LSU is going to be able to have the services of a few more guys. Mason Taylor was listed as probable, Brian Kelly said. Omar Spates, probable, so that's good news. A tight end and a linebacker that LSU needs there. Good news for the Tigers. And then Mason Smith should be able to play. So that might be why you see LSU in Vegas as a pretty hefty betting favorite. You're getting up, depending on where you look, 9-10 points, getting up closer to that mark. But I don't know. I got a sneaking suspicion that Mississippi State's going to play very well in this game, and I think that the Bulldogs are going to give the Tigers all they want at home there in Starkville. But that's the injury report for that game: LSU and Mississippi State. Tennessee and Florida. The biggest injury news for both of these teams is that they're going to likely get their centers back. More so Florida. Definitely with Kinsley Aguakon. He's returned to practice last week. Didn't play. He warmed up, but didn't play. So he's been listed as questionable for Utah and for McNeese State. But he's gonna get back. The reports out there. He's the starting center. Of course, he suffered an ankle injury in fall camp, but he's really been unable to practice till this past week, and then. He gets in there in practice, starts working with Graham Mertz and with that offense, but he wasn't able to fully go in the game this past week. They anticipate getting him back for Tennessee, which is big, not only for obviously the most experienced offensive lineman that Florida has, Kinsley Aguakon is, but also that just gives you another guy that can help with protections, can help to, make sure that they're identifying things right in the run game against a very active Tennessee defensive front that causes a lot of havoc. So Kinsley Aguakon likely back for Florida in this. On the other side, Josh Heupel was a little bit more non-committal about Cooper Mays. Quote, he said, he was with us last week. He warmed up with us. We made a decision pretty early in the week that he probably would not play in that football game. Anticipate him having a good week of practice here and being ready. So that's not exactly saying, okay, he's gonna go, but he's gonna practice, and I think they're gonna see how that ankle is. If they do get him back, that is a big deal, an experienced guy, just like with I mentioned Aguakon there for Florida. Anytime you have experience there in the middle, especially for Tennessee on the road, a road environment, having a starting center back is even more important. Being able to handle crowd noise, make sure your protections are right. Of course, with Tennessee, there's the tempo there and just all that familiarity of the operation and how it goes. Having Cooper Mays back would be huge for Tennessee. Now in the Georgia and South Carolina game, Georgia is looking to get their top running back from last year, Daijun Edwards, get him back and healthy. Kirby Smart said he's good to go. He could have played last week if they needed him. They held him out against Ball State, and he should be good to go. Lad McConkey still day-to-day with that back. I mean, he's been having spasms, been having some stuff in that back, and they're doing everything they can to try to get him back. They said he's day-to-day. Don't know if he's going to be able to go. Javon Bullard went out with an ankle injury. Probably looks like a sprain. Didn't return after in that Kent State game after he went out. Probably precautionary, but with a ankle sprain, I mean, you never know. It just depends on how it responds this week. And they said he would not practice yesterday in the press conference. So we'll see how Javon Bullard does with that ankle injury week to week. Is Juice Wells healthy for South Carolina? Shane Beamer continues to say he's healthy. He's going to be ready to go, all that kind of stuff. But it's clear with only a couple of receptions so far this year, that Juice Wells is not himself. Will he get closer to being himself for SEC play here? Raheem Brown is a guy who tweaked his hamstring after what looked like could be a more serious injury, but he tweaked his hamstring day to day. Of course, with his soft tissue injury there, you never know. They've got guys out there that, were injured during the game that still we don't know a lot about. Keenan Nelson Jr., is he going to be available? Drew Tuazama, is he going to be available? These are guys who got injured during the game and didn't return. We'll see. We know Mo Kaba's out for the year devastatingly for South Carolina with a knee injury. You hate that for that young man. He'd worked back to get back from injury. Now he gets knee injury again. Nick Emenwari was out with a hamstring against Furman. Is he able to return? Again, soft tissue injury. Who knows? And then defensive back David Spalding was also absent from the game against Furman. So they're missing some pieces on the back end. They were already missing some linebackers there, of course, with Mo Kaba. They should get Marquis Anderson. Their guard should be good to go on the offensive side of the ball. So, and then maybe Raheem Brown, with it not being as serious, maybe he'll be able to get back. And then is Juice Wells healthy? That's kind of the questions for South Carolina. So that's your injury report heading into week 3 of SEC play. Now let's talk about some coaches and some players who stepped up in these Monday pressers and took some accountability and some responsibility for some things. Let's start with Zach Arnett for Mississippi State. He was asked in his presser if he is, learning some situations or if he could do things over again type deal in the Arizona game, would he as a head coach, and he said, hey, there was a lot of situational stuff deciding, all right, it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 4th down. Am I going to go for it? He said twice in these first 2 games that he's elected to go for things in the red zone and not kick a field goal. He said those are 6 points he prevented as a coach. But on the flip side of that, there was a time when Arizona was on a 19-play drive in the second quarter there, and Mississippi State stands up in their own territory, forces a fumble at their own 6-yard line, and then they're able to get it out to the 41-yard line. So they return it for 35 yards. And Zach Arnett said he got on the headset and told his offensive coordinator, Kevin Barbie, hey, be conservative here. Don't be aggressive. Don't try to go down. They're up 14-0 at the time, mind you. So he told the offensive coordinator, be conservative. Run the football, chew up clock, give our defense a rest right here. And he said if he had to do it all over again, he would be aggressive, fully try to go take the momentum there. They end up trying to kick a longer field goal, and then they still give up points at the half with a deep pass on the back the other way from Delore. So I think you saw Zach Arnett learn a lesson as a young head coach that, hey, you got to play to win and not play not to lose. So Zach Arnett, I commend you for coming out and saying that. A lot of guys wouldn't come out and say that. So that was great stuff there from Zach Arnett, taking accountability for, hey, the style of how you're going to go about doing things, even when your defense is winded, going out and being aggressive, because you got that man right there, Will Rogers, as quarterback. Let him go out and do his thing. He's one of the most accomplished ones in the SEC over the last several years and in SEC history in many aspects. So good on Zach Arnett. Tate Ratledge for Georgia, he came out and said, hey, he's the starting right guard. He said, hey, we have not played up to our standard as offensive line at Georgia. He said they got to be more physical. They got to open up better holes for their running backs and just get more movement. They said they are not happy with how they have played. Listen, Georgia only rushed for 3.5 yards per carry and only 99 yards on the day against Ball State. That is not going to get it done. Of course, up front and then on the perimeter, Georgia has had some blocking issues. Can they get those fixed? But Tate Ratledge just has come out flat and said, hey, we did not play to our standard, and we expect to do so going forward here for the University of Georgia in terms of blocking both on the perimeter. They talked about the tight ends getting their job done and also the offensive line. Then lastly, Nick Saban talked about the lack of identity for Alabama as an offense. He came out and said that they weren't able to run the ball consistently enough to really get a play action game going where they can be explosive. They had some explosive plays in drop back, but you don't want to continue. Jalen Milroe needs to have, that play action, maybe get him moving on the perimeter a little bit more. He was dropping back a lot. Texas was able to pin their ears back and come after him because Alabama was not able to run the football consistently. So they didn't have to, really worry too much about, stopping the run first. They were more, we're going to stop the run on the way to the quarterback type deal. So when it comes down to it, Nick Saban said, but you also have to be able to have a good play action game to go with it, to be able to drop back when we need to and be efficient in all those areas. He said, but I can't say that we were in this game other than making some explosive plays. We didn't do that well enough. So Nick Saban not happy with able to establish an identity, averaging only 3.1 yards per rush and 107 yards total in the game. So we know that Alabama offensive line. He asked about, did he think about switching up offensive line? The answer was no, not really, because who else has he got? I mean, he's playing the best that he's got. Caden Proctor is a freshman at left tackle. They've got other freshmen in the two deep, and then some guys who've been there for a little while that probably aren't as good as talented as those freshmen. So he's playing the best that he's got there. And then also was asked a little bit about Tyler Buckner. He said, he played good in the scrimmage. We felt confident about his development, all that kind of stuff. But overall, Jalen Milroe is the best available for Alabama at quarterback because of the offensive line issues. If you're not able to run the football and teams are going to be able to pin their ears and come after you in their pass rush, you need a guy who can evade that pass rush. But I do think when he talks about this identity here, what he means is, Tommy Rees, let's help out our quarterback. Let's get him moving a little bit. Let's get some more play action, some more bootlegs, some more sprint out, stuff like that. Utilize that dual threat nature of Jalen Milroe. Too many times he was just dropping straight back, and they were kind of coming after him and being able to pin their ears back and do so. So those are some guys that took accountability. Had two coaches there, and Zach Arnett and Nick Saban, and then Tate Ratledge, of course, coming out as well. And then another one is Hugh Freeze, who came out and said that, he didn't like necessarily how the quarterback rotation went. That's not exactly how he wants to do it. But he also said Peyton Thorne, just didn't play up to the standard that they want him to play, but he did come up clutch and played great in the last drive. So I don't know that you're going to see as much rotation in that quarterback. I know they got to get Robbie Ashford his touches and find ways to be creative, but Peyton Thorne needs to get in a rhythm and be able to do that. So that's something that Hugh Freeze mentioned as well. Now, a little bit of line movement. Missouri and Kansas State. Missouri opened up as a 1-point underdog at home. Now that has grown to 4 or 5 points. So people feel like Kansas State's going to be able to, go on the road and take care of business against Missouri. I'll just tell you this, Como is a weird place to play, and I think Missouri's got to find a way to get Luther Burden the ball creatively, whether that's wildcat, whether that's being able to motion him around jet sweep, but being able to move around and then decoy off of that. I think if they get a little bit more creative, I like Missouri's defense. So I think that's a line that you could see, people take advantage of there. Mississippi State opened as a 7.5 point underdog at home. That's moved to 9.5 or 10, depending on where you look at it. That may have something to do with the news that Mason Taylor, Omar Spates, and Mason Smith will be available for LSU. We'll see. No other big injury news from that one there. So that's probably what that line is due to. And people just kind of, coming in money on the LSU side. That one may go down before the game actually starts. Georgia, South Carolina opened up at 25. Now it's ballooned up to 27.5. That's a lot of points, but we'll see what that one ends up at. Will it creep up even higher before things get going? Alabama, interestingly enough, opened up as 35-point favorite over a South Florida team. That's down to 32. So getting a little bit more manageable there for the Tide to be able to cover that one. And that's just a lot of points in any game when you're talking about line movement and you're talking about things opening up there. And then lastly, Tennessee opened as a 7.5 point favorite on the road at Florida. That's gotten down to 6 8.5 in some of the different books out there. I think maybe that lackluster performance against Austin P, and then maybe the news that Kinsley Aguacon's is going to be back for Florida might have helped bring that back down a little bit there for the Gators. So 6.5 point home underdogs there. Billy Napier's got a pretty good record as an underdog. Like outright, he wins a lot as a underdog. So we shall see how that goes. And then Vanderbilt opened as a 3-point favorite on the road at UNLV. That's ballooned up to Vandy being a 4.5 point favorite on the road. So Vanderbilt, who couldn't stop the run against Wake Forest, people simply think UNLV is an even worse program at this point. So that is your line movement. And guys, this has been your SEC Morning Report. If you enjoy this content, if you want game predictions, betting tips, Jake's takes with Jake Crane, a daily show live every day with Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, Gavin Schoenwald, all those guys, then this is the place for you to be. Daily SEC coverage, and you're not going to find anywhere that pumps out more content. So make sure you're subscribing here. It is free. So hit the subscribe button. That helps out the algorithm, helps everything going out. Leave your comments. If you think it's terrible, if you think it's great, if you agree, disagree, leave your comments. That helps us out as well too. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Like I said, this has been your SEC Morning Report here on Tuesday, September 12th. I'm Blayne Gilmer, and we'll catch you guys next time to talk more SEC and college football right here on Southeastern 14.